Greetings, friends. I'm standing here at Smithfield in front of the amazing statue, Courage and Compassion. A statue erected in the memory of a young Swedish diplomat, 31 years old, Raul Wallenberg. What is it doing here in Parsippany, and what does it mean? In 1944, the time had run out for the Jews and other undesirables of the Third Reich in Hungary. Thousands were deported to Auschwitz and Treblinka and the other death camps of Eastern Europe. In the middle of the slaughter and the genocide, one man stood up representing the compassion and the conscience of the world. Stories told of innocent people being herded to the shores of the Danube River and machine guns lowered. All at once, in the rainy night, a car pulls up, a man jumps out, a tall, thin man dressed in a fedora hat, declaring, "These people are all visa holders of Sweden. They are all coming with me." And instead of a watery grave in the Danube, they were brought to the buildings that Raul Wallenberg, the young diplomat, had rented. For those few months in 1944, he stood as a tree of life against the angels of death of the Nazi Party and their supporters. After the war, when Budapest was liberated by the Red Army, Raul was summoned to the KGB headquarters and was never seen again. This great hero, who saved as many as 100,000 innocent men, women, and children, when he cried out for help, no one was there for him, and his fate vanished into the gulags of the Soviet Union. It is the memory of Raul Wallenberg's courage and heroism in standing up for people who are nothing like him, in standing up for people whose commonality was their common humanity. With bluff, with incredible courage, with sleight of hand, with charisma, he worked tirelessly. It is that courage and compassion that we feel is more relevant today than ever before. The power to stand up in the name of justice, in the name of compassion for each other. And where more appropriately than the beautiful township of Parsippany, this township founded on so much diversity, so much history, so welcoming to so many communities of different faiths, of different demographies, of different ages and generations, all together in Parsippany, New Jersey. Over the next few minutes, we will give tribute to the memory of Raul Wallenberg. We will hear speakers from communities of faith and even international leaders, and of course, our own Mayor, Michael Soriano. It is my pleasure to share an invocation, Reverend Susan Saucedo-Sicca, Vicar of St. Gregory's Church here in Parsippany, on behalf of the communities of faith and all people of goodwill here in our township of Parsippany.
To the memory and witness of Raul Wallenberg, one of the righteous among nations, who risked his life so that others might be free, thereby losing his while saving thousands. Let us honor his courage to stand against prejudice, injustice, and oppression. Let us be moved by his commitment to do everything in his power to help as many as possible. Let us be inspired by the fact that indeed one single individual can make a difference in this world. Let us make of his legacy a vision of our future. Let us remember that we too may have been born for such a time as this. Let us not end this day without a renewed commitment to live in peace, respecting the dignity of every human being. And in the words of longtime peace and civil rights activist Reverend William Sloane Coffin Jr., May God give us the grace to never sell ourselves short, grace to risk something big for something good, grace to remember that the world is now too dangerous for anything but truth and too small for anything but love. May God's grace, peace, and blessing be always upon us. Amen.
It is my pleasure to introduce two speakers. One, Her Excellency Annika Ramby of the Swedish Consul in New York City, to be followed by Sarah Scheller of the Swedish Raul Wallenberg Academy.
Dear friends, my name is Annika Ramby, and I am so proud to address you as the Swedish Consul General in New York and to honor the memory of Raul Wallenberg. I would like to extend my warmest greetings from Sweden to the town of Parsippany, Troy Hill, and to the Adat Shalom Synagogue and its congregation. Few Swedes have recognized as much international recognition and attention as Raul Wallenberg, and rightfully so. In 1981, he became the second of a total of 8 people to be named honorary citizens of the United States. The others include Winston Churchill and Mother Teresa. Wallenberg was probably not the heroic type in the conventional sense, but he was fearless, and a very skilled negotiator and organizer. And I think he had America to partly thank for that. Wallenberg not only spent 4 years at the College of Architecture at the University of Michigan, but also hitchhiked around the US. Hitchhiking gives you training in diplomacy and tact, Wallenberg wrote home in a letter. A few days before Wallenberg was taken by the Soviets, he was urged by a Swedish colleague to return to Sweden to be safe. Wallenberg replied, "To me, there is no other choice. I've accepted this assignment and I could never return to Stockholm without the knowledge that I've done everything in human power to save as many lives as possible." The extraordinary achievement and courage of Raul Wallenberg in the face of the greatest of dangers in the darkest hour is a constant reminder how one person's dedication can save tens of thousands of lives. Raul Wallenberg's deed should be seen as a call to all of us today to act against intolerance and hate, against anti-Semitism and xenophobia. And perhaps the best way we can honor Raul Wallenberg is to try to follow his moral conviction and his personal courage. And to quote another American hero, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And to help make sure that there is no silence, the Swedish Prime Minister will be hosting a large international conference against anti-Semitism and for the continued remembrance and education on the Holocaust. It had to be postponed due to the pandemic and will take place in October next year in Sweden. Thank you all on behalf of Sweden and the Swedish people for honoring the legacy of Raul Wallenberg.
Hi, my name is Sarah Scheller and I'm the Secretary General of the non-profit organization Raul Wallenberg Academy, based here in Sweden, Stockholm. We are a non-profit founded by, among others, this amazing lady, Nina Lagergren, who is the sister of Raul Wallenberg. And her mission was really clear, to make sure that the next generation of young leaders have the courage to stand up for human rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is described as a milestone in the history of civilization. It's a common standard for how we all people should behave and treat each other, and we all have the responsibility to protect these rights every day. But that's easier said than done, right? A prerequisite for fulfilling the human rights is that we are aware of which they are, because if we don't know our rights, then we don't know when they are being violated or when we are violating other people's rights. But sadly, we see on the news every day how human rights are being violated. What we need right now is more brave individuals standing up for a more humane society. And one who certainly did so was this man, Raul Wallenberg. His deeds during the Second World War in Budapest is truly unique. He was a young man who went his own way, and through courage, knowledge, creativity, leadership, and organizational skills, he was able to save tens of thousands of lives during the Holocaust. And today we are inspired by the life and deeds of Raul Wallenberg. But who would have guessed that one of our most important methods how we can encourage young people to be inspired by Raul Wallenberg is 30 black steel boxes. Not in this size. In reality, all those black steel cubes are big as a freight container, and it arrives at the schoolyard and will let the students interpret freely, how can I stand up for human rights? And our method is based on cultivating the skills that Raul Wallenberg really manifests. Empathy, civil courage, leadership, and the skill to cooperate with others. And these 10 feet steel black cubes is just one way of reaching students and start these really important conversations regarding civil courage, my own responsibility. We also have a list here with over 100 ways how you can make a more humane society, which we collect from people all over the world. And both the cube and the list and all the trainings we do with young people, it's starting spectacular conversations about civil courage, empathy, and equality, and it allows us to start tackling all these issues we see around us. We have a shared responsibility to fulfill the human rights, and we need to find the strength to work together. And I believe that role models is an important tool to find the inspiration and the courage to make a difference yourself. Raul Wallenberg is, of course, a huge role model, but do you have any other role models? I invite you to speak about who your role models are today, who inspires you to wake up in the morning and act with empathy and civil courage. I wish you the best. All the greetings from me and the team at Raul Wallenberg Academy in Sweden. Bye.
I am proud to introduce Mayor Michael Soriano and thank him for his support and participation in the Clergy Council of Parsippany, to be followed by survivor Olga Menser, who's going to share her own moment of danger and salvation with the help of Raul Wallenberg.
Residents of Parsippany, thank you for joining us at our annual commemoration of Raul Wallenberg at Smithfield. The year 2020 will go down in history as the year of pandemic, a case study for future generations to improve and perfect our society's response to disaster. But I think 2020 would more appropriately be remembered as a year of heroes. Heroes come in all shapes, sizes, races, backgrounds, and time periods. Now this year in particular, we've all come to appreciate the heroics of healthcare workers, first responders, and frontline employees. Today we gather to remember another ordinary person who left an extraordinary impact on the world. Raul Wallenberg was a Swedish architect in the time of the Third Reich. While serving as a diplomat in Nazi-occupied Hungary, he used the powers of his office to rescue tens of thousands of Hungarian Jews from extinction. And for his efforts, he paid for this with his life. In 1981, Raul Wallenberg was made an honorary citizen of the United States, one of just 8 foreign nationals to receive that honor. His sacrifice is emblematic of thousands who at great personal cost actively intervened to protect the rights of Europe's Jewish population and other minority populations. That is why we commemorate Raul Wallenberg here in Parsippany. That is why we have a memorial dedicated to his memory at our community's largest park. Because Raul Wallenberg's courage and compassion represents the best of humanity. And I'm proud to say we have many heroes right here in Parsippany following his example. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next participant in today's commemoration, Olga Menzer, a survivor of the Holocaust from Budapest, Hungary, with an incredible story of her survival at the hands of such horrors and the courage and compassion of Raul Wallenberg.
I am Olga Menzer, and I am from Budapest. And in March 1944, the Nazis came in Hungary, and everything changed. We had to leave our home and looking to move in with other family, because some of the houses was selected as they call Jewish housing. And so we moved in, and the people had to share the apartment, where each family could have only one room. And then my mother heard about Wallenberg, that he was giving out protective paper, which called Schutzpass. And so my mother get those papers for my sister and for herself and for me. My father was not in the picture on the time because he was already serving in forced labor in Budapest. But so anyway, the Arrow Cross, which was the SS in Hungary, one morning they came and they knocked on the door on the apartment house where Jews was living now. And they said, out, Hungarian. And we was put in a group, and we was taken outskirts from Budapest. And so my mother had those papers and argued with the Arrow Cross that, we have those protective paper and we should be not taken away. Of course, they didn't listen. So we was taken outskirts of Budapest and Ferihegyi, close to the airport, and my mother showed them the paper, and they looked the paper on the time, and they said the paper was okay. So we was taken back to Budapest, but now we was taken to a different house. We understood was the protective house what Wallenberg set up to live there. So we was very crowded. We was like 20 people in a room. Most of us slept on the floor, some on the cots. Of course, we had only the clothes what we had on, nothing more. But unfortunately, again, one morning, the Arrow Cross came again, and we was taken away outskirts of Ferihegyi, in Budapest. My mother, of course, showed them the paper again, and they looked the paper and they said, those papers are false papers. They are not valid because didn't have a border mark on it. So I have no idea if that was true or not, but anyway. So we were separated from my mother. My mother was taken away. With my sister, we stayed behind, and we worked in digging ditches in Ferihegyi, and we stayed there for a number of weeks. I can't remember exactly how many weeks. And finally, we was taken back to Budapest, and the cattle train was waiting for us. We was put in the cattle train, and we was like sardines, like 90 people maybe. Some people get hysterical. We had nothing to eat, nothing to drink. It was a pail put in the train, which we used our bathroom. The train stopped a couple of times. People had to take out the pail, which was whatever, we used as our bathroom. We was very hungry. We traveled for many days, maybe not as many, maybe 2-3 days, and no food, nothing to eat. And also we had to stand because there was no room to sit down. And as we traveled one evening, the train stopped, and they unlocked the door. They told us to get out fast, and the SS was standing there with their rifle, with big dogs, and we arrived, as we later I find out, in Ravensbrück concentration camp.
So
I understand that many Jews, actually I know somebody who had those papers and they was the original paper, therefore they survived. So I know, but I know also some other people who had the misfortune, because they had false paper. But anyway, he saved many Jews, I think maybe 80,000, perhaps even more Jews. And so he was a wonderful man, being a Gentile person, and he was so kind that he wanted to really help the Jews, and he did. He did the best what he could. Even he did more than that what he could. I understand some people, he was going to the train station and he was giving out paper, and he saved many of the Jews. So we Hungarians especially very thankful for what he did.
Hello, I'm Rabbi Deborah Smith, Rabbi of Congregation Or Halev and a resident of Parsippany. In fact, I live near Smithfield, where the monument to Raul Wallenberg is located. It is a privilege to be able to offer this benediction in honor of Raul Wallenberg today. May each of us be blessed to be upstanders like Raul Wallenberg was. May we each aspire to improve the world, to respond when we see someone in trouble. May we each save at least one life when a life needs to be saved in our lifetime. Saving one life is as if we have saved the entire world. Let us have the courage to stand up to tyrants and bullies. And above all, let us each remember and never forget the words of Raul Wallenberg. One person can make a difference. That person could be you.
As we share a moment with survivors of the unspeakable evil of the Holocaust, placing flowers upon the memorial to Raul Wallenberg, we resolve to each of us in our own way, in our own sphere, embody and infuse our own lives and work here on earth with his spirit. I urge all of us to visit standupfortheother.org, a website started right here in New Jersey, and to sign the pledge that whenever within our own faith community or any other community we hear people disparaging members of any other group, that we will stand up, that we will represent the voice of compassion and the voice of empathy, and that we will become leaders in the pattern of Raul Wallenberg, each in our own way. In this way, his work, his light, his courage lives on in us. Thank you.